In the far reaches of space, where stars burned cold and silent, the Zarn Empire ruled over dozens of systems. They were proud, ancient, and feared by many. But even the Zarn, with their mighty fleets and advanced technology, had never seen what appeared on their long-range scanners one quiet rotation. A signal, a strange, pulsing transmission, came from an unmarked sector of space. It was weak but constant, like a whisper in the dark. The message carried no language, no code, just rhythm, a deep hum like a heartbeat. At first, the Zarn thought it was just background radiation or maybe a failed probe. But when their long-range observer ship, Vashator, moved closer, things changed. Captain Loreen of the Vashator was not a nervous creature. She had served in many wars and survived black hole storms. But when her ship reached the signal's origin, she stared in silence. There, floating in the cold emptiness, was a massive structure, dark, still, and perfectly shaped. It was unlike anything she had seen. It was not a station, nor did it move like a ship. It simply hung in space, silent and alone. No lights, no energy signatures. Nothing but that quiet, constant hum. Her crew scanned the object carefully. At first, the scan returned normal readings: dense metal, heavy armor, strange outer plating. Then, suddenly, the systems began to fail. Screens blinked off. Engines shut down. The ship's AI screamed before falling silent. Then the crew began to scream too. One officer fell to the floor, clutching his head, whispering strange words. Another began laughing and crying at the same time. Captain Loreen tried to speak, to move, but her limbs would not obey. Her last clear memory before blacking out was of the scan screen flashing a single message in glowing red symbols. Observation triggered. Await response. When the Vashator was pulled back by a recovery ship days later, it looked unharmed from the outside. But inside, half the crew were dead. The others were broken, minds lost, eyes wide open and staring. The ship's computers had melted, literally melted, as if exposed to a sun. The Zarn leadership watched the footage with growing fear. No known weapon could do that. Not through a scan. Counselor Ralek, a stern Zarn leader known for dismissing rumors, looked pale as the images were shown again. "How can a simple scan destroy a warship's mind and machines?" he asked aloud. No one had an answer. Some scientists believed the object used an advanced form of quantum defense. Maybe it had sensed the scan and attacked back. Others whispered something worse, that the ship had not defended itself at all. It had simply been observed, and that was enough to break those who looked too closely. The surviving data showed something else. The shape, design, and metal composition of the structure were not completely unknown. Deep in their records, far older than the Zarn Empire itself, were stories of similar ships. Ships built by an ancient species that disappeared long ago. A species called humans. The Zarn had never truly believed those stories. Humans were a forgotten myth. Primitive creatures who lived on a blue planet far from the galactic center. Records said they had been wiped out in early wars, or that they had sealed themselves away. But now, after what they had seen, no one laughed at those stories anymore. More disturbing was what came next. All across nearby systems, devices began to react. Old probes, long dead, blinked to life. Satellite arrays twisted slowly to face the direction of the object. Even the weather patterns on nearby planets began to shift slightly, as if something massive had entered the region without physically moving. The Zarn leaders met in silence. No one dared suggest another scan, but the question burned in every mind. What was this ship? Why did it react so violently to being observed? And if it truly was human, what else had humanity built before disappearing? They decided to send a coded message to other empires, asking if anyone else had seen a structure like this. Within days, the answers came. The Xylari refused to speak and closed their borders. The Draken sent only one word back: run. The Y, oldest race in the galaxy, the Arcrid, responded with a strange message. If it is human, do not wake it. Do not think. Do not look. But it was too late. Back on the Vashtor, one of the surviving officers lay in medical stasis. He was not conscious, yet he repeated the same sentence over and over, as if something had been burned into his mind. It sees us now. It remembers. And it waits. The Zarn Empire, for the first time in 1,000 years, was afraid. The mysterious ship remained still, unmoving in the void. Yet the entire galaxy felt its presence. It had not fired a single shot. It had simply been scanned, and civilizations had begun to tremble. In the cold space above Sector 9L, the mysterious ship remained motionless. No lights flickered. No weapons moved. It looked dead, like a tomb. But every day, the Zarn scientists watching it grew more nervous. They had stopped calling it a ship. Now they called it the Ark, because nothing else made sense. It was too big, too quiet, and far too old. Back on Zarn Prime, the High Council held an emergency meeting. Every scan, every attempt to understand the Ark had failed. The data recovered from the scout ship Vashator made no sense. Symbols shifted on their own. Equations rewrote themselves. The best minds of the Empire were left confused, or worse, terrified. One scientist, after staring at the scan images for too long, had clawed out his eyes, whispering, "It sees through me." A young tech officer brought in a report that shook the council further. The scan's material readout, the metal of the Ark, matched no known element in the galaxy. It was older than any planet they had charted. And more impossible still, it was changing. The hull wasn't decaying, it was growing, repairing itself. Counselor Ralek demanded answers. How can this thing fix itself in dead space with no energy, no crew? No one responded. A decision was made. A full military fleet would be sent, not to destroy, but to contain. 30 warships, 5 carriers, and a command vessel were moved into orbit around the Ark. It was the largest fleet the Zarn had mobilized in a century. Fighters flew in perfect formation, surrounding the object like a cage. At first, the Ark did nothing. Days passed. The fleet watched. Scans were forbidden. The silence stretched on. Then, one curious captain broke the order. He ordered a low-level scan, just a surface read, harmless and quick. His crew hesitated, but obeyed. The scan activated. Within seconds, the lights across the fleet dimmed. The stars in the region flickered, as if blinking. A strange hum echoed through every ship, like a whisper beneath the metal. The Ark lit up, not with fire, not with engines, but with ancient symbols glowing across its hull. Blue, red, and gold shapes swirled like a living language, pulsing with power. For the first time, the Ark responded. 10 ships vanished. They did not explode. No sound. No warning. One moment they were there. Next, empty space. Their signal beacons. Remained, but nothing else. It was as if they had been erased. The remaining fleet panicked. Some tried to run. Others opened fire, unleashing thousands of plasma bolts toward the Ark. But every shot stopped in the air, frozen inches from the hull, like time itself had paused. Then the energy reversed, folding back into the weapons that fired them, melting the cannons. From the Ark came no words. No defense system, just quiet. The glowing patterns faded. The ship went still again. On Zarn Prime, chaos broke out. People began evacuating cities far from the Ark's sector. Border systems shut down. Riots started as fear spread across the Empire. The Council sent desperate messages to other galactic powers asking again, "What is this thing?" But the other empires gave no help. The Draken sent only a riddle. The Ark does not kill, It reveals. The Archrid responded with silence. 1. Message, however, arrived that shocked the council. It was from an old, forgotten colony once believed destroyed, an outpost known only in legend. The message was simple. Do not seek the Ark. It is watching. It waits for the ones who made it. The humans. Humans. That name hadn't been spoken in centuries. The Zarn believed humans were extinct, primitive, emotional, violent creatures who had vanished after the last Great War. But if they built the Ark, then they were not weak. They were something else. Something far beyond what the galaxy remembered. A historian brought out of deep stasis confirmed the markings on the Ark's hull were ancient Earth design. Very old, pre-collapse era. The Ark was real, human-made. But why would humans build something like this? A ship that did not fight, but terrified entire empires just by existing? That question remained unanswered. What the Zarn didn't know was that across the stars on the far side of the galaxy, a single human outpost was watching. Deep in a mountain bunker, a gray-haired man sat in front of a dusty screen. The display showed the Ark's location and activity. When the 10 ships vanished, he leaned back in his chair and whispered, "They touched it." Beside him, a younger officer asked, "Should we warn them?" The old man shook his head slowly. "No, this is their lesson. The Ark is our memory. They wanted to learn our past. Now they've seen a glimpse." Above Sector 9L, the Ark continued to drift in space, cold, silent, waiting. It had reacted once, and the galaxy had learned something terrifying. The Ark did not need to move. It only needed to be seen. Across the galaxy, fear spread like wildfire. News of the Ark, of the vanished warships, the dead scans, and the terrifying silence was now impossible to contain. Even neutral planets began preparing bunkers. Civilian transports changed routes to avoid the entire region near Sector 9L. No one wanted to be near the thing that could erase ships with a thought. But the Ark remained still. It hadn't moved, hadn't spoken, hadn't shown any signs of life since the last fleet incident. It simply was, floating there like a ghost of something long forgotten. Back on Zarn Prime, secret meetings continued. High Counselor Rallick stared at a projection of the Ark for hours, as if trying to understand it by force of will. "Why would humans leave such a thing behind?" he asked. "And why now? Is it awake?" A low-ranking analyst, Kieran, hesitated before speaking up. "Sir, it's not awake. It never slept." The room went quiet. Kieran placed a data chip into the console. "I studied old human war records, what little we could recover. During the last human galactic war, they never used fleets to win. They used signals, traps, psychological weapons, and something worse, something called Ark-class threats." No one had heard that term before. Kieran continued, his voice trembling. "It was a project name. The humans didn't design ships to fight wars. They designed them to end them." The council was stunned. "Are you saying the Ark is a weapon?" Rallick asked. Kieran nodded. "Not just any weapon. A final one. It doesn't shoot. It doesn't chase. It forces you to look at it, to scan it. And when you do, it gives you knowledge you were never meant to have." "But why?" someone asked. "Why would humans build something like that?" Kieran answered. "Because they wanted to make sure no one would ever dare attack them again." Across space, deep in a Dreeken fortress world, another secret meeting took place. The Dreeken were a warlike species, proud, strong, but now they whispered like children in the dark. An elder Dreeken general played a recovered message. It was human audio, centuries old. "We are not the monsters you fear," the voice said. "But if you force us to be, We will become your last mistake. The Drekan general turned off the message. They built the Ark to end curiosity, and now we've woken it. In another corner of the galaxy, far from all empires, a deep space mining station picked up something strange. A pulse, a single wave of energy passed through their scanners. Gentle, but clear. And with it came images, visions. The miners dropped to their knees as memories not their own filled their minds. Wars they never fought, weapons they never saw, and screams they never heard. One miner, barely able to speak, gasped, "I saw a city, burning, on a planet with blue oceans. Earth." The signal faded, but it was spreading. The Ark had not fired any weapon. It had simply remembered. And now others were remembering, too. Somewhere, on a hidden human relay station, a group of observers watched all this unfold. They were calm, cold, trained. Their commander, a woman named Ayla Reyes, tapped a screen showing the spread of the Ark's pulse. "It's reaching. Further now," she said, just like it was designed to do. Another officer asked, "Should we shut it down?" "No," Ayla said. "The Ark was never meant to be controlled. It's a warning left behind, not just for aliens, but for us too. If someone finds it, it means we've been gone too long." Back on Zarn Prime, panic turned to paranoia. What if more Arks existed? What if this was just one of many human relics sleeping in the dark, hidden in dead sectors? Every race in the galaxy began digging through old maps and unexplored sectors, terrified of what they might find, or what might find them. And then, just as fear reached its peak, the Ark did something new. It sent a signal, not a threat, not a weapon, a recording. Across every channel, every ship, every satellite near the Ark's range, a human voice played. Calm, clear, old. "If you are hearing this," the voice said, "then the Ark has judged your scan worthy. What you felt was only a fraction of what remains within. We are not here to destroy. But we do not forget. You have seen only one ship. There were once thousands. And we do not lose wars." The message ended, and with that, the Ark went dark again. But the galaxy was no longer the same. Even without moving, even without firing, the Ark had done the unthinkable. It reminded everyone of a power long buried in myths: humanity. No one knew if they were still alive, but if they were, they had not forgiven. And the Ark was just the beginning. The galaxy was no longer calm. After the Ark's message echoed across space, every empire, alliance, and pirate clan started moving. They were no longer curious. They were afraid. The name humanity had returned like a ghost from an ancient war, and no one knew where. The ghost was hiding. But they all wanted answers. Some wanted peace. Most wanted control, and a few wanted revenge. On Zarn Prime, the High Council ordered every deep probe and long-range scanner to search for signs of more human relics. Dozens of exploration ships left their docks, scanning old war zones and abandoned sectors. One of those ships, the Zeltor, found something. Not another Ark, but something just as strange. A ruined space station orbiting a dead sun, covered in old black metal. The scans said it was at least 10,000 years old, but its systems were still warm. Inside, they found human symbols and bodies. The station was filled with human remains, all long dead, but strangely preserved. Some of them wore strange armor. Others had no armor at all, but their bones were laced with metal. Implants. Cybernetic enhancements. Far ahead of any known technology. But that wasn't the most terrifying part. In the center of the station, locked in a sealed chamber, they found a sphere. Small, smooth, cold. But when a Zarn scientist touched it, the sphere lit up and whispered in a human voice, "You are not ready." The scientist dropped dead on the spot. Heart stopped. Brain silent. No weapon was fired. Just a sentence. The ship immediately sealed the station and fled back to Zarn Prime. The Council was stunned. The Ark had been terrifying, but now there were signs that humanity had left many things behind, and they were not all silent. Meanwhile, the Draken Empire began their own search, not for human relics, but for humans themselves. Their emperor, Haifang Korth, refused to believe that the species who once defeated them could just vanish. He believed that somewhere the humans were hiding, waiting. He sent his Black Talon squads, elite killers trained for extermination, to forgotten corners of space. Old human colonies, dead worlds, places where even stars had stopped burning, and then one team found something. On a cold moon orbiting a gas giant, the Black Talons landed on an abandoned research base. It was quiet, lifeless, but deep underground. In the cryo-storage chamber, they found 5 pods. 4 were empty. 1 still had life. A human, frozen, but alive. Female. Old, scars across her face. A metal tag read, "Commander Elira Mason, Earth Strategic Recon." They thawed her carefully. She opened her eyes, calm, cold, deadly. The Draken tried to question her. She said nothing. They tried threats. She smiled. Then, when they turned their backs, she broke her restraints, snapped 2 soldiers' necks, and activated a beacon hidden in her blood. 10 minutes later, the entire facility exploded, along with the squad. But the beacon remained, and someone answered it. Across the stars, a dormant satellite flared to life. Deep beneath an asteroid belt, ancient machines stirred. On an unmarked world, a black pyramid cracked open, and in the center, a light flickered. The humans were waking up. Back on Zarn Prime, Counselor Rallick received a transmission that wasn't meant for them. It was Draken military chatter, scrambled and half-broken, but clear enough to understand. Human found. Hostile. Destroyed base. Beacon active. Repeat. Beacon active. Rallick stood frozen. "They've found one," he whispered. Kieran, the analyst, looked pale. "Sir, this changes everything." Rallick nodded. "Now we are not just looking at a weapon. We are looking at a return." The council fell into argument. Some wanted to open communication. Others demanded immediate war. One member even suggested trying to capture the Ark and turn it into a weapon, but no one had a real answer. Because no one knew how many humans were left, or where they were, or how many Arks still floated in the dark. What they didn't know was this: humanity had never truly vanished. They had simply stepped back, watching from the shadows, waiting for the galaxy to grow arrogant, waiting for a moment like this one. And now that they had been seen, they would not hide again. Far from the center of galactic space, inside a forgotten base hidden under an icy ocean, a woman stood before a glowing screen. Her hair was silver. Her uniform had no markings. She stared at the Ark's signal data and smiled. "It begins," she said quietly. Behind her, dozens of humans in armor rose from cryo-sleep. Their eyes opened, cold, sharp, and angry. The Ark's pulse had done more than warn the galaxy. It had awakened its protectors, and now the hunt would begin, not by the aliens looking for humans, but by the humans looking at the galaxy. The stars above planet Draven 6 were calm. Traders came and went from its markets, and local guards patrolled the space docks like always. The people had no idea that something ancient was about to return. The Draken Empire had used this planet as a supply base, refueling warships, training mercenaries, and monitoring nearby sectors. After the Ark's signal, their leaders thought it was a good idea to tighten security. They didn't expect them to come. At exactly Oro 3:17 Standard Time, Every security camera on the planet blinked once. Just once. Not off, just a flicker. No one noticed. 4 minutes later, the power grid failed for exactly 6.4 seconds. Generators rebooted, systems recovered. The guards laughed, thinking it was just a glitch. It wasn't. At Euro 329, the attack began. But there were no ships, no warning, no messages, just shadows. The first Draken guard never saw what hit him. 1 second, he was patrolling the east wall. Next second, his throat was gone, and a black shape vanished into the darkness. The second wave hit. The command center, fast, silent, and terrifying. The cameras showed nothing at first. Just guards falling, consoles exploding, lights going dark. But when they slowed the footage down, frame by frame, they saw them, humans, wearing dark armor that didn't reflect light. Helmets with red glowing eyes. Weapons that fired almost silently, pulse blades and sonic darts. They weren't an army, they were hunters. In less than 7 minutes, the Draken command center was wiped out. Not captured, not damaged, wiped out, no survivors, no signals sent, just silence. At 0341, every speaker across the base crackled to life. A voice, calm, cold, female. This is your warning. We are awake. You scanned what was not yours. You touched what you did not understand. You drew first blood. There was a pause. You will not get a second chance. The message ended, and the humans vanished. When Draken reinforcements arrived 3 hours later, all they found was ruin. Buildings melted with precision. Corpses arranged in perfect lines. No human tech, no trace, just one symbol carved into a steel wall, a planet, a skull, and a single word, Terran. Back in Draken High Command, Emperor Korth slammed his claws against the war table. They dare attack us now, like cowards in the night? His advisors were silent. One finally spoke. They were only 5, sire. 5 humans. Korth's eyes burned. Then find the rest. But even as his rage grew, his fear grew deeper. He remembered the old wars, the stories his ancestors told, about how humans didn't fight to win, they fought to end. Meanwhile, on the hidden Terran base deep beneath the icy ocean, Commander Elira Mason reviewed the footage. Her soldiers stood silently behind her, watching the data feeds from the Draken strike. Minimal casualties on our side, one officer reported. Full success, no tech left behind. Elira nodded. Send the message to Sector Gamma. Phase 2 begins tonight. A young recruit asked, Ma'am, won't this start a war? Elira turned to him slowly. Child, the war never ended. The galaxy just forgot. We're here to remind them. Across the galaxy, other attacks began. A pirate base in the Zorlak Belt, burned to ash. A black market trading post known for human tech smuggling, vanished. A listening station that had scanned the Ark twice, now just a crater. But none of the attacks were random. Each one was surgical, precise, clean. Like someone was checking off a list. In the Galactic Council, panic began spreading. Counselor Ralek called for an emergency meeting. We must open talks with the humans. We must tell them we're not their enemy. Others disagreed. One shouted, we should strike first, find their bases and burn them. Ralek slammed the table. And if that's what they want? What if we're walking into a trap? Because deep down, he feared something terrible. The Ark had only warned them. These attacks were not war. They were just reminders. Reminders of what humans could do when they were angry. Back in deep space, near a shattered moon, a fleet of human ships slowly came out of hiding. Black holes, silent engines, no markings. A voice echoed inside the lead ship's bridge. Targets confirmed. Retribution pattern unlocked. Commander Ayla Reyes stood at the helm, her eyes cold, her hands steady. Send the message to the stars, she ordered. The message was simple. You looked into the abyss, now the abyss looks back. The galaxy had awakened the Ark, now the humans were returning, and they were not interested in peace. The Galactic Council Hall had never been this full. Delegates from every major species, Zarn, Valari, Drikan, Ulmar, and more, sat at their long silver tables, watching the center of the chamber where a hologram of the Ark floated in the air. Its glowing edges shimmered with unreadable human symbols. Counselor Ralek stood at the center, his voice sharp and urgent. "We can't ignore this anymore. The humans are not only alive, they're moving, coordinated, intelligent, and they're angry." Murmurs spread like wildfire. A Valari diplomat raised a shaking hand. "They destroyed the Dravon 6 base with only 5 soldiers. A Drekken," General growled. "That was an act of war." Ralek turned to him. "You declared war long ago when you tried to erase their kind. You just never expected them to survive." A moment of silence followed. Then came the vote. Some wanted diplomacy. Others wanted retaliation. A few even wanted to surrender, to beg the humans for peace, but fear had a stronger voice. The Council passed a resolution, an emergency defense pact between all known civilizations, a secret alliance created not for peace, but for survival. They named it the Unity Accord. Ships from different species began gathering. Armies trained together. Spy networks shared information. For the first time in history, enemies became uneasy allies. All because of one species returning from the shadows. But they didn't know humans were already watching. From high orbit above a gas giant, a stealth drone relayed everything to Commander Mason. "The Unity Accord is real," the AI reported. "They plan to locate all Ark signals and launch a combined strike." Elira Mason stared at the screen. "Let them come," she said coldly. "They still don't understand what they're facing." Across the hidden human bases, a message was broadcast. The galaxy is uniting. Phase 3 initiated, divide the Accord. One by one, key targets were selected, not for destruction, but for doubt. In the Ulmar Senate, a trusted minister was exposed as a spy, his logs filled with false reports crafted by human AI. In the Valari Fleet Command, a ship exploded during training, caused by a mysterious software hack that left behind no traces, except human code. In Drekken territory, a supply convoy vanished. When its black box was recovered, it played a strange sound, human laughter echoing in the dark. The Accord began to crumble from the inside. Every species started to question the others. Who was truly loyal? Who had been infiltrated? Who was being used? The Council held emergency meetings day and night, but their unity cracked like glass under pressure, and far away in a forgotten Terran listening post buried inside a hollow asteroid, human commanders watched the chaos unfold. "We don't need to fight them head-on," said Commander Reyes. "Just make them fight each other." "Exactly," Elira replied. "Fear is more powerful than fire. But not every alien leader wanted war." Counselor Ralek sent a private message, encoded, hidden in a deep-wave band, to the Terrans. He begged for a meeting. Surprisingly, he got a reply. One line. "Come alone. No tricks. You'll be safe. For one conversation." Against every warning, Ralek traveled to the dark edge of the galaxy, where a lone black station floated above a red dwarf star. Inside, he found Elira Mason. She didn't greet him like an enemy. She didn't threaten him. She just asked a question. "Why? Do your people fear us so much?" Ralek hesitated, then said the truth. "Because you change everything. You don't follow rules. You don't submit. You adapt faster than we can plan. And when you strike, you do it without warning." Elira nodded. "And yet, you created the Accord, a galaxy-wide alliance. Isn't that impressive?" Ralek looked down. "Only because we fear what you might become." Elira leaned forward. Then maybe you should stop fearing and start listening. Raleigh frowned. Listening to what? She smiled. To what comes next. And then she showed him something. A star map. Hundreds of red dots blinking across the galaxy. Not Terran. Attacks. Terran outposts. Hidden. Ready. Waiting. You thought we were few. You were wrong. You thought we were extinct. You were very wrong. Raleigh left the meeting shaken. He knew the truth now. Humanity hadn't just survived. It had grown. In silence. In darkness. And now it was rising. The Council would not survive. Another mistake. And the Unity Accord? It had no chance, because the humans had already planted the seeds of doubt, and soon those seeds would explode. The galaxy was no longer united. The Unity Accord, once built on fear of the humans, had collapsed into suspicion and betrayal. Species that once stood together now turned weapons on each other, blaming spies, sabotage, and secret attacks. Everywhere, the same question echoed, how are the humans doing this? But the truth was worse than they imagined. They weren't doing it. They had already done it, years ago. In a hidden chamber beneath a shattered moon, Commander Elira Mason stood before the full Terran High Command, every general, every fleet captain, every AI corps present. The time has come, she said calmly. They think this is about war, but war was never our goal. General Reyes stepped forward. Then what is? Elira smiled, cold and quiet. Revelation. A command was sent across all human networks. Silent outposts, buried ships, sleeper AIs, all activated at once. Across the stars, one message echoed on every open channel, every frequency, every screen. You scanned us, you feared us, you hunted us, now see us. And then the scan began. On the edge of Valari space, a single Terran battleship uncloaked. Massive, dark, and silent. The Valari, thinking they had time, sent 6 cruisers to investigate. They never made it back. The battleship didn't fire. It only scanned. One long, deep scan, and the result? Every Valari system crashed. Defense grids failed. Warships shut down. Cities went black. The scan was so advanced, so powerful, that it bypassed firewalls, disabled AIs, and infected even organic tech interfaces. In short, one Terran scan had ended an entire civilization's ability to fight. Panic spread like wildfire. In Drekken space, they prepared for battle. Their fleets moved to defensive positions. Traps were set, ambushes ready. But the humans didn't attack. They simply appeared on every Drekken screen, images of every secret Drekken base, every plan, every weakness. Information the Drekken believed was hidden. Humans hadn't just scanned the galaxy, they had been recording it, watching, learning, mapping for decades. On the council world of Althena, chaos broke out. Half the species demanded surrender, the other half called for a last stand. But deep down, they all understood the same thing. They hadn't been fighting ghosts. They'd been fighting gods in the making. Counselor Raleigh stood at the central chamber, silent, watching the final message the Terrans broadcast, a video showing the Ark's launch, the destruction of old Earth, the survivors building in secret, children raised in the void, soldiers trained from birth, scientists who built machines that could think, adapt, and outsmart entire networks. A voiceover played as the footage continued. You tried to end us, but you only gave us purpose. You buried us in silence, but we became the storm. The final image? A human child, born in zero gravity, floating in a black suit, staring into the camera with glowing eyes. You should have let us die. Then, silence. No attack. No invasion. Just fear. Because now the galaxy knew humans didn't want planets. They didn't want thrones. They didn't want revenge. They wanted to be remembered, and now no one would ever forget. On the edge of space, Elira Mason stood on the bridge of the lead Terran ship. Her officers waited. One asked, "Commander, they're surrendering. Orders?" She turned slowly. "Accept nothing. Take nothing. We don't need them to kneel." Then, "What do we do?" She looked out into the stars. "We move on. Let them sit in their silence. Let them wonder if we'll ever return." Another officer whispered, "So, it's over?" Elira shook her head. "No. This was just the reminder. Now the real work begins." The Terran fleet turned away, silent, untouched, victorious, not by war, but by fear. Back on Council worlds, people spoke in whispers. Children were told bedtime stories about the humans who returned. Governments rebuilt their systems, never knowing if another scan was coming. And deep in space, the humans watched, always watched, waiting. Because the galaxy had scanned one Terran battleship, and it had nearly destroyed them. But there were more, many more, sleeping, hidden, and next time, the scan wouldn't be a warning. It would be the end.